Everyone. Thank you so much for joining this webinar today and taking your time this evening. It's 5 p.m. in UK, and wherever you're joining from, it's different time zone, I understand. So thank you so much again. And I'm Dr. Devi Sundar. I'm going to be your host and speaker of this webinar. Today, this webinar answers one important question. Could the way you breathe be running your blood sugar? At first glance, it might sound like very unrelated. Lungs, blood sugar, too much different component and different organs in our body. But the science tells a very different story. And over the next 40 minutes to an hour, I'm going to take you through this. And one important note before I would begin, this is an educational webinar. So everything which I've shared here is evidence referenced, and it's also not a substitute for a medical care. So whatever management or COPD management or diabetes management you're with, you have to follow the instruction from your healthcare provider. And this is actually a supportive tool for your understanding and what other integration would help you to enable your quality of life. That's what you're going to get out of this webinar today. So with that being said, if you're joining live this webinar, please do say hello in the chat box and say where you're joining from. So it will help us to understand where the webinar being consumed and also to create a community of support where there are similar brains who's thinking the same way and we can connect and collaborate. And if you're joining this webinar as a recorded version, you're going to just get this in one go. So do leave your comments and share your thoughts as well, whichever mode you're watching, live or recorded. And I appreciate the comments and any collaborations or connections, more appreciated and welcomed. So with that being said, let's begin. So let me start by telling a little more about myself and why I'm so passionate about this topic. So I'm Dr. Devi Sundar, a mind body medicine consultant, a clinical director, educator, and a researcher. I'm also founder of a global online platform, Teletherapies, and Mind Body Synergy, CIC, to the nationwide UK population. And I have over 23 years of experience across clinical health services across the Dublin HSE and service executive, and also NHS England, and also in our education sector in Wales. And I also created a YouTube channel, digital health education platform, where I'm so passionate about educating the community and making a meaningful change. And the YouTube channel is Breathe and Thrive. And I also created a community enterprise to deliver some engaging, meaningful community activities like Breath Art and Breath Cafe to create that awareness of how to manage your mental health in with chronic respiratory disease or mental challenges alone, how you can creatively manage. So those are some of the creations of mine, and all are focused in the respiratory rehabilitation and mental health area. How am I capable, my capabilities and skills, how it's going to be transferred? I hold a doctorate in psychology and a master's in psychotherapy and respiratory practice. I'm also a certified neuroscience coach, clinical hypnotherapist, Ayurveda, and breathwork specialist. And long before this, I'm also a fellow of our Education Academy. So this actually would give you the information which I'm going to give is not a casual one. It's something which I'm deeply more passionate and research deeply, and is supported by evidence. And with all my knowledge and expertise, I'm now more into the advocacy of integration of mental health into chronic respiratory disease, which has taken me to the European Parliament last year, 2025. And the year before, I've initiated a UK Parliament petition to integrate mental health into the chronic respiratory disease. And that also led me to the Mind Body Synergy CIC creation for the community purpose. So everything I do is driven by one conviction, but the emotional and the physiological dimension of breathing are being systematically missed by healthcare, and that we can do better. So that's the only mission for all of these initiatives I'm actually doing in the community. So I would like you to take you the journey of what I'm going to cover today. So it's about 9 sections, as you can see in the slide. And so I'll start with why this matters, giving you figures about the UK and global picture of diabetes and COPD. And I'll go into the core physiology of how your breathing shifts your nervous system, the vagus nerve, your heart rate variability, stress hormones, and blood sugar. And I'll then spend some time on two very important and invisible topic in healthcare, that's emotional breathlessness and the shared biology of COPD and diabetes. And I have some evidence-based I mentioned earlier. So the other part of the conversation would be in the slides, honest evidence review of a few of the articles related to COPD, diabetes and breathing, especially focus on the breathing and blood sugar, whether that has a direct connection. And I will finish with some practical strategies, a breath work, giving you a taste of breath work. So as time permits, we will be doing a few minutes of that session. And also to give you about information of the Breathe and Thrive or Breathe Better. It has dual names to the program. It's an 8 weeks program for the patient and the carer, educational and therapy program, and that's offered through Therapies online platform. So I'll give you some details on that. And so you're looking at around staying with me, going along with me in this journey for 40 minutes to an hour. So let's make it count. So let's start with why this is so urgent right now. Metabolic disease is one of the largest public health challenges in UK and worldwide. So most of you watching might be aware of it. And it's all over the social media, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube channels, and in newses as well, manual news, newspapers. So it's all over the place. And this is not a new information, yeah, for you. When I walk through the figures, some might have been aware of these figures as well. So over 5 million people in UK are now living with diabetes, and that milestone has passed for the first time in 2024. And around 4.4 million are formally diagnosed, 90% with type 2 diabetes, and approximately 1 million more are thought to be undiagnosed. So the figure is a little bit daunting. So that many people are actually having diabetes. And there's been a 40% rise in the type 2 diabetes diagnosis among people under 40 in UK between 2016 and 2023. And so this actually gives us information. This is no longer a condition of older age. So young people do get diabetes. Alongside this, we are living in an environment of chronic stress, digital overstimulation, sleep disruptions, and sedentary behavior, health inequalities, rising respiratory disease comorbidities. All of those things are going to be contributing to the biological stressor. And breathing sits at the center of how the body responds to all of them. Breathing is one of the very few body functions that is both automatic and consciously we can control it. So that makes it a unique doorway into our nervous system. Now, let's look at the scale of this challenge in numbers. Globally, 537 million people are living with diabetes in 2021, according to the data from the International Diabetes Federation. And it is projected this will rise to 783 million by 2045. And in the UK, the 5 million mark was exceeded. In UK, the 5 million mark was exceeded for the first time in 2024. Around 4.4 million being diagnosed, 90% type 2 and 8% type 1, and around 2.4 million more at a higher risk. South Asians and Black populations in UK face a disproportionate higher risk, and this is not an equal opportunity condition right here. So now, looking into the other part of the disease framework, the COPD one, globally, it's estimated that 230 million people have COPD, making it the third leading cause of death worldwide. And in UK, approximately 1.7 million people are diagnosed with COPD, with up to 600,000 more undiagnosed. And hospital admissions for COPD in England rose by 9% in the year 2024. So looking at this, so this is a critical connection I would like to make here. Up to 30% of COPD patients have comorbid type 2 diabetes. And the data from UK Biobank, one of the world's largest health research cohorts, shows that people with diabetes have a 35% higher risk of developing COPD. That's a bit shocking. And these two conditions are no longer a separate one now. They're biologically intertwined, and the breathing sits at the heart of both of this condition. Now, let's look at how the COPD and diabetes connect each other. What is the shared biology picture? So the relationship between the COPD and type 2 diabetes is bidirectional. Starting on the left, you can see how COPD contributes to diabetes. First one is systemic inflammation. COPD elevates your pro-inflammatory cytokines like TNF alpha, that is tumor necrosis factor alpha, IL-6, that is interleukin-6, and C-reactive protein. And these, all the three of them, impair the insulin receptor signaling and drive insulin resistance. Now, second thing is the chronic hypoxia. When oxygen is persistently low, a protein called hypoxia-induced factor 1 alpha is activated, and this increases the glucose production in the liver, worsening hyperglycemia. And because there is resistance to the insulin, the glucose levels in your blood then surges. And third is corticosteroid therapy. Steroids used to manage COPD exacerbation, both forms like inhaled and oral, can induce glucocorticoid related hyperglycemia and worsen HbA1c control. Now, looking on the right of it, it's the reverse condition, how the diabetes damages the lung. Chronic high blood glucose causes glycation of the lung collagen and elastin, and that leads to stiffening and aging of your lung tissues. And that then reinforces that elasticity reduction and the reduction in the airway function. So both your elasticity and airway function gets lower over a period. And diabetic autonomic neuropathy can affect the respiratory muscle themselves, impairing your ventilatory response. And both conditions generate oxidative stress, creating a self-reinforcing loop of vascular damage, inflammation, and worsening the outcomes. So the clinical consequence, which you can see in the middle of the slide in green, are very, very serious. So they have, because of this link between COPD and diabetes, people having both conditions in them, end up in more hospitalization, more COPD exacerbation, more worsening of their HbA1c control, higher infection risk, and higher mortality. So this matters because breathing intervention that addresses autonomic dysregulation and stress physiology may be relevant to both conditions at the same time. Now, to understand how breathing helps, we need to understand how the nervous system is functioning. So the autonomic nervous system regulates all the body functions you do not consciously control, like example, heart rate, digestion, blood pressure, hormone release. It has two main branches. The sympathetic nervous system, there's a fight or the flight response that prepares the body for action. It releases the stress hormones, raises your heart rate, and signals the liver to release glucose into your bloodstream. The parasympathetic nervous system, on the other hand, is a rest and digest. Most people are familiar with this, with a lot of calming most of them are familiar with this, with a lot of calming meditation, other videos in the YouTubes and in TikTok and all over the social media. So parasympathetic is rest and digest, to remember. So that supports your recovery, digestion, and metabolic regulation. The vagus nerve is its primary highway. And here's what important thing I want you to know here. Breathing directly influences which branch is dominant. So if you're having a rapid, shallow upper chest breathing, you tend to activate and sustain more of the sympathetic activity. If you're breathing slow, controlled, diaphragmatic, you tend to activate your parasympathetic activity, shifting your body away from your stress state. So this shift it happens really quick in real time. It's not gradual. When you change your breathing, your nervous system responds almost immediately, like putting on the switch on and the bulb actually goes on like that. So switching on your breathing, the way you breathe, it shifts your nervous system function very quickly. So this is why breathing has become focus of research in stress medicine, cardiovascular health, and now in metabolic regulation. Now, let me take you to how stress hormones affect blood sugar. So our bodies evolved to survive emergencies. When the brain senses threat, it releases the stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. And these hormones then signal our liver to release that stored glucose into the bloodstream. The logic is simple. If you need to fight or flee, your muscle needs some fuel, and that's glucose. Yeah. So that's what the muscle relies on to fuel fast. So in genuine emergency situation, this is adaptive. And the problem lies in our modern life. The financial stress, email overload, chronic anxiety, sleep deprivation, and social pressure. These are all the threats, the psychological threats. But the brain cannot actually easily distinguish between a physical threat and a psychological one. And the hormone response is similar. So when this stress response is chronically activated, it contributes to elevated fasting glucose, increased insulin resistance, increased abdominal fat storage, sleep disruption, and appetite dysregulation. So breathing is relevant here precisely because breathing patterns are one of the fastest way to signal safety or danger to the nervous system and to begin interrupting that cycle. Yeah. So now I would like you to take to the mechanism that's connecting all of this, which is the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is one important part in the parasympathetic system, and belongs to parasympathetic system, and it's one of the most important communication pathways in the human body. And it travels from the brainstem through the neck, chest, abdomen, and connecting with the heart, lungs, liver, pancreas, and intestine. Scientific reviews now describe that vagal pathways are key regulators in glucose metabolism, coordinating insulin secretion, digestive signaling, appetite regulation, inflammatory response, and energy balance. The vagus nerve is how the brain talks to the metabolic organs and how the metabolic organs talk back to the brain. So, breathing is directly affecting our vagal activity. Slow, sustained breathing tends to increase the heart rate variability, which is an important measurable marker of the parasympathetic and vagal function. So this is why breathing research has moved beyond the pulmonary physiology into cardiovascular and metabolic medicine. Now let's pause on this heart rate variability. You hear this term a lot of times in this webinar and also across the social medias as well, if you're more into the field of breathing and breath work and evidence-based. So the heart rate variability, HRV, is not an irregular heartbeat. It refers to the natural variation in the time between a consecutive heartbeat. So a healthy, resilient nervous system shows high variability. The heart adapts fluidly to the demands. This reflects a strong parasympathetic regulation. Lower HRV is associated with a chronic stress, burnout, poor sleep, metabolic disease, cardiovascular strain, and diabetes. So slower breathing practices have shown, and it's evidence-based research, consistently increase the vagal activity, which is a marker of the HRV, okay, healthy HRV. So this has been replicated across multiple studies and it's evidence-based, as I mentioned earlier. And now, the question is, does the improved HRV directly lowers blood sugar? If you ask that question to me, not necessarily. The relationship is very indirect because HRV reflects the nervous system state, and the nervous system state influences the metabolism. So that's the link which is running here. So think of HRV as a window into how well your stress recovery system is functioning. Now let's look at the physical chemistry of what breathing actually do. Breathing is not just an exchange of oxygen anymore, because research has been supporting for a longer time now, saying that lung is not only a carrier bag for oxygen and push the carbon dioxide. Lung is not a carrier bag just to get the oxygen into your body and then push the carbon dioxide out of your body. It is a direct regulator of the blood chemistry, carbon dioxide levels, and the nervous system signaling. Okay, there is a connection between the two. So rapid shallow breathing tends to reduce CO2 levels, amplify the physiological stress signals, increase arousal, and sympathetic activity. The brain reads this as a threat. So the opposite of it is, by now you should be knowing, the slow controlled breathing that stabilizes the carbon dioxide level and reduces the physiological arousal and increases the parasympathetic activity and calming in your body. So the brain reads it as a safety signal. So this matters because the brain uses this breathing as a continuous signal about the state of the world you are in, the environment, because the brain detects whether you're safe all the time. So you can literally change the neurological message your brain is receiving, and by doing so, influence the hormonal and metabolic downstream process simply by changing how you breathe. And that is a remarkable tool to have available to you at any movement without cost. So now, what does the research actually say about breathing and blood sugar? So as you can see on the slide, this is something, an honest conversation, a scientific conversation I'm going to lead here, where I'm going to separate the evidence from whatever the wellness hype is currently in the present marketing. So there are many claims online that breathing exercise can reverse diabetes and cure insulin resistance. And current evidence, research evidence, I would like to specify, does not support those claims. That doesn't mean that those are all not real, as individual responses, physiological responses are different and it might not have been studied. But I'm not going to go into that conversation here, but I'm just going to present the current evidence and what is currently in the research practice. And so you have some well-informed knowledge on whenever you're approaching some modalities like breathing or weight management or diabetes management, whatever it is. Yeah, so it is all for your information to support your decision making. So let's jump into what the studies say. A 2023 randomized control trial in women with type 2 diabetes found that adding slow, deep breathing and mindfulness to aerobic exercise improved both glucose and cortisol outcome more than the exercise alone. So that is rated as a strong evidence. And if you see another study about that, so it's a 2022 study in men with type 2 diabetes reported improvements in glycemic status following a slow breathing practice, and that is a promising one. And scientific reports in the healthy subjects have shown that slow breathing increases the parasympathetic activity and no direct change in the glucose, and that has a mixed kind of evidence. And broader reviews show improvements in stress physiology with indirect benefit, and that is a moderate evidence. So, the honest message which I would like to convey here is breathing supports metabolic health indirectly, primarily through the stress reduction, autonomic balance, and sleep improvement. It is an adjunct to other managements, what the people with COPD or diabetes would be undergoing as a medical management. So it's not to replace that, it is an adjunct to that. So that still matters enormously, but we must not overstate it. One of the strongest breathing metabolism links happens not during the day, it's during the night. So the powerful connection between your breathing and blood sugar happens during your sleep, which is a very important part of your day, or I would say in the 24 hours. So poor sleep quality is strongly associated with insulin resistance and increased appetite hormones and weight gain and higher fasting glucose. Sleep apnea, where breathing repeatedly stops and starts during sleep, is particularly a very important contribution to the increase in the glucose levels. And the body experiences repeated oxygen drops throughout the night, and so that's also affecting your breathing. So each time your oxygen drops, the stress response is activated. But your body perceives that as a threat, so psychological threat, and it's also a physiological threat here. The oxygen level drops, and the cortisol rises, and inflammation increases, and blood pressure elevates. And this happens dozens and even hundreds of times per night. Some people might not be even aware that they're having sleep apnea. That's the irony of it. So, for many people with poor controlled type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, undiagnosed sleep apnea may be a major and invisible contributor. So, improving breathing during sleep through sleep study referrals or CPAP or positional therapy or weight management may have a larger metabolic impact than any daytime breathing exercise. And this is why asking about snoring and sleep quality is essential in metabolic health assessment. So, do talk with your GP if you have issues with sleeping and you're waking up frequently and it has been happening for you more than a 2 weeks time period. Then it's something which you have to focus on to identify what is the issue to rule out. So you can chat with the GP to have an assessment if you have a sleep apnea or sleep studies. Particularly in this scenario, people might do an overnight oximetry. Your GP or healthcare professional may provide a oximeter to take home and put it on your finger for overnight to monitor during your sleep how your oxygen levels, and then you give it back to them and they have this recording inside. So that will track down how your oxygen levels are being during the sleep. And now many of the phone health apps have the sleep apnea monitoring as well, your sleep monitoring. And so you can actually have that as well to screen out what is that really wrong with you. Is the oxygen levels is really impacting your health, or is it the diabetes management or COPD itself? So that's something where you need to be focusing on. So there is one more biological pathway we need to understand, that's inflammation. So I'm going to take you to the next slide. So inflammation and metabolic health. So chronic low-grade inflammation, it is one of the familiar terms, I believe so. Everyone is aware of that we are having a chronic low-grade inflammation due to the stressful environment and a fast-moving world. Chronic low-grade inflammation is now recognized as a central driver of the metabolic disease, including the type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and obesity. Inflammation interferes with the insulin signaling and damages that blood vessels and promotes more of fat storage. So researchers have identified what is called a cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway, a vagal signaling route through which the nervous system can modulate inflammatory response. Slow breathing activates this vagal pathway, indirectly influencing these inflammatory signals. This is why vagus nerve stimulation is now being studied as a therapeutic target in both inflammatory and metabolic condition. So it is a developing area, but it points towards an integrated model of medicine where nervous system regulation and metabolic health cannot be separated. So now I want to address something that is almost entirely missing from the clinical conversation. That is on the next slide, emotional breathlessness. So when you talk about emotional breathlessness, what is this? Emotional breathlessness is something which is not appearing in the clinical guidelines or policies where it is, even though millions of people experience it every day. Emotional breathlessness is not the breathlessness caused by the lung disease or the physical exertion. It is the dysfunctional breathing triggered directly by the emotional state, the anxiety, depression, grief, chronic stress. So, research published in the European Psychiatry in 2023 found that anxiety alone accounts for about 61% of the variance in dysfunctional breathing patterns. And this is not imagined, it is measurable and physiological. And here's the invisible cycle. Emotional distress drives shallow, rapid upper chest breathing. That breathing patterns then activates your sympathetic nervous system. And when the sympathetic nervous system activated, your hormones, the cortisol rises, heart rate increases, and glucose dysregulation begins, which then worsens the anxiety. And the cycle continues silently. Now, the inflammation evidence is that it is where it gets more clinically important. Patients with depression show markedly elevated pro-inflammatory cytokines, including interleukin 6, IL-6, and C-reactive protein. A review in 2023 in Biochemical and Biophysical reports confirmed that these cytokines directly impair insulin receptor signaling and drive insulin resistance. Both anxiety and depression overactivate the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenaline axis. And when this is dysregulated, the cortisol increases and insulin sensitivity falls, and then the blood glucose level also increases. And this confirmed in the research published in 2025, this bidirectional connection. So the relationship is bidirectional. Inflammation promotes depression, depression promotes more inflammation, and insulin resistance is both a consequence and a driver of this loop. So now looking into another meta-analysis in neuroscience in 2022, it is a neuroscience and biobehavioral reviews that confirmed insulin resistance and depression reinforce each other through a shared pro-inflammatory pathways. So the clinical implications are very profound. When someone with diabetes or pre-diabetes is also carrying anxiety or depression, it's extremely common in this population, and their breathing pattern may be silently amplifying their metabolic disease. So identifying emotional breathlessness is therefore not a soft skill. So because it is also connected, that COPD and diabetes link is there. So and they also COPD also have anxiety and depression. So there is a strong connection between these mental health, COPD, and diabetes. So it is no longer a soft skill to identify emotional breathlessness, treat anxiety and depression just like talking therapies, but it needs to become a clinical priority, and prevention should be a focus. And breathing interventions may be one of the most accessible tools we have for interrupting this cycle. Now, let me show you one of the most studied breathing techniques for nervous system regulation. One breathing approach that is having a consistent scientific attention is resonance breathing, that is resonance frequency breathing, which is nothing but you're slowing down the number of breaths you take per minute. So normal breathing for a healthy individual between 12 to 18, some studies show 12 to 20 per minute, but that is a normal typical resting respiratory rate we're looking into. But the resonance frequency breathing is advocating for breathing 5 to 6 breaths per minute. Okay, and this pattern is very simple. Inhaling for 5 seconds and exhaling for 5 seconds and repeating it for 5 to 10 times. And repeating it for 5 to 10 minutes. So that's what it is all focused. And research suggests that this rhythm maximizes the HRV, the heart rate variability, and vagal activity. And people commonly report reduced stress, anxiety, and improvement in their emotional regulation, greater calmness and focus, and a better sleep. So studies are confirming these benefits of it. So think of resonance breathing not as a metabolic shortcut, but as a nervous system training. Consistent practice builds autonomic resilience. So we are going to try this now, right now. So find a comfortable place wherever you are, and we're going to breathe together. So have you found your place? Sit comfortably. This is not a medical treatment, okay? This is actually a demonstration, and this is actually one of the neuroregulatory tools, I would say, to help to reset your body's physiological system to calmness. So relax your shoulders, let your hands rest on your lap. We'll breathe in through the nose, if that's comfortable. For some people who have some nasal septal deviation or blocked noses, breathing through mouth is allowed. So just focus on the counts. So breathing in, 4, 3, 2, 1, and breathing out, 4, 3, 2, 1. Steady, consistent, slow breathing in and breathing out for the count of 5 is the key thing to be focused on. That matters a lot. Okay, so you're actually regulating the rhythm of your and the depth of your breath. Okay, so the goal is calm, steady, unhurried breath. Again, breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathing out, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathing out, 4, 3, 2, 1. Final one more time. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathing out, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well done. So thank you for participating in this. So I believe so if you have actually felt anything, any changes, some might have felt some calmness, some might have felt that they have slowed down their heart rate, or your mind have settled. Some might have felt nothing different, but that's completely normal. And we all individuals have various responses, and our body respond at a different timeline. So that's fine, but this is actually a demonstration. And if you're focusing on this sequence of 5 in, 5 out, and repeating it 5 to 10 times, and that's something which you're going to uh, teach your nervous system and your breathing patterns and the depth and the rhythm of it to regulate your nervous system, which has all the benefits which I've spoken in the previous slide. Now, let me actually take you I should have actually gone into that slide while you're practicing. Let me show you the slide. So breathing in and breathing out. Now, let's be clear and honest about what breathing practices can and cannot do. Yeah, and it's something which I want to be direct about the boundaries here, because public health communication depends on this. Breathing exercise may genuinely support the metabolic health. They may help with stress, emotional regulation, autonomic nervous system balance, sleep quality, reducing sympathetic overload, and anti inflammatory signaling. But they cannot replace medical care, diabetes medication, balanced nutrition, physical activity, dedicated sleep treatment, or weight management where needed. Yeah, that breathing cannot replace all of those. Okay, if that's I wanted this to be nailed on in this webinar. And the goal here, sorry, the goal here is integration, not replacement. So breathing is a supportive tool, the broader category. It's not a cure. It's a standalone, not a standalone cure, but it's research are working on those things. But for the moment, we need to understand you cannot just rely on breathing to cure your COPD or your diabetes. You have to incorporate all the standard medical treatment, and along with that, you're incorporating the breathing practices. And that is the key for your quality life. Now, let's compare in my next slide. So slow breathing versus exercise for glucose. So exercise and slow breathing, both of them influence glucose regulation, but through very different mechanism. So if you take exercise, which is a gold standard, as a direct metabolic effect, when muscle contracts, they take up the glucose from the bloodstream for energy, and the blood sugar can drop during and after the exercise. So over time, the exercise improves that insulin sensitivity significantly. And this is why exercise remains the most evidence-based lifestyle intervention for type 2 diabetes, and it's the primary goal. On the other hand, slow breathing works differently. Its effects are primarily through the nervous system, reducing the cortisol, lowering sympathetic activity, improving your vagal tone, and stabilizing that stress glucose cycle. The effects are real but indirect, and typically slower to appear than the acute glucose drop from the physical activity. So the key message here I want you to take is use exercise as a primary metabolic intervention, use breathing practice as a supportive nervous system regulation strategy, particularly for stress management, sleep, emotional regulation, and autonomic resilience. So together, they make a powerful combo, not a standalone one. Okay, so that's something which I want you to take from this slide and from this webinar today. Now, so what would the practical daily strategies actually look like? An integrated approach to metabolic health through nervous system regulation actually looks like in practice as a one which I'm going to prescribe today for you. So move daily, walk or resistant train most days. Exercise should be your primary glucose tool, and this comes very much as a key. And 5-minute breathing practice once or twice daily. Inhale 5 seconds, exhale 5 seconds, which we practice resonance frequency breathing before in the session. So use that one. And that is the core pattern. And then consistent sleep. And that breathing practice is a core pattern. And even if you're a beginner or an advanced level breathwork practitioner in your daily life, but you can also incorporate other breath work. I'm not telling that you have to use only the resonance frequency breathing, but that's something which you need to be included in alongside with other breath work practices, what you're doing. And consistent sleep, 7 to 9 hours, consistent schedule. If you snore or wake unrefreshed, ask about a sleep apnea assessment to your GP or a healthcare professional. And reduce stress. Use your breathing before meals, after work transitions, during your stress peaks, and before your sleep time. So that's something which you need to be focusing. And also the best time would be before taking your glucose reading if you're feeling anxious. So an integrated approach works, and that's what the slide is giving you a key message. Breathing works best when it sits alongside good nutrition, movement, medical care, and social support. And consistency matters more than duration. So 5 minutes every day is worth more than a 30 minutes one time, one off session. Okay. So that's consistency is very, very important. Now, before I close, let me share where is the science heading. Now, this field of vagus nerve stimulation is moving very fast. Both implantable and wearable devices is being studied for metabolic and inflammatory conditions beyond the epilepsy and depression. And the HRV, the artery variability biofeedback technology, and that's been developed into clinical tools that can guide personalized breathing practice with real-time objective feedback. And wearable stress monitors enabling continuous autonomic monitoring, creating the possibility of truly a personalized nervous system intervention. And finally, the digital therapeutics app-based and AI-guided breathing programs are also entering into the clinical trials. So integrated model is entering and gaining more of light, and where the nervous system can regulate itself and the body can reset, and that's recognized as a therapeutic target alongside with the diet, pharmacology, and the exercise. So now let me bring everything together. I want you to take the 6 things from this webinar today. Number 1, breathing regulates the autonomic nervous system, not just the oxygen intake. And number 2, stress physiology, cortisol and adrenaline directly raises your blood glucose levels, so breathing can help to interrupt the cycle. Number 3, vagus nerve connects your breathing patterns to your metabolic organs. Number 4, slow breathing reliably improves the heart rate variability and the vagal activity. So evidence for this is very consistent. So that's something which you need to focus as a consistent practice, as we discussed earlier. And number 5, the evidence for direct blood sugar lowering is promising, but still limited. And number 6, breathing is a powerful supportive tool, but not a standalone treatment for diabetes. It belongs in an integrated approach. So there's your 6 points. Take it with you, share it with someone who needs it, or into your circle to create that awareness and be a champion to promote all the health information in your community and use it on yourself. Thank you so much for your time, for being here. I hope the session has given you a new lens, a clearer picture of how your breathing, your nervous system, and your metabolic health are connected. So if this resonated with you today and you wanted to go deeper, I want to tell more about my 8-week program. And this is a patient and a carer educational therapy program, as I mentioned earlier, the Breathe Better or Breathe Thrive program. And that brings in together 6 pillars in it: the respiratory physiology, breathwork, mental health therapy, neuroscience, hypnotherapy, and Ayurveda. So it's not a quick fix, and you cannot hope for the quick fix because your body needs to respond to what you're learning and doing on yourself. So it's a comprehensive evidence-based journey into a whole body well-being. So to find out more, book a consultation with me and visit tele-therapies.org. And I would also follow my YouTube channel, Breathe and Thrive with Devi. I release weekly educational content and a webinar, which you're here right now. And I also have this community enterprise that is Mind Body Synergy, CIC, where I offer breath art, canvas breath art, breath cafe, and a few other sessions, and also for the family, sacred spaces, where this is all aimed at creating that awareness of mental health challenges as a standalone, or mental health challenges in primarily in the chronic respiratory disease population and people with diabetes as well, because diabetes, COPD, or chronic respiratory disease is connected together, and they all both share a common pathway. And so breathing can be a supportive tool for both of them to challenge their mental health challenges, what they're going through. So that's something which I would like to share with you today. So to know more information, do go to the website, Mind Body Synergy CIC. It's UK-wide and it's based in Gloucestershire. So stay connected with me, follow me on the Instagram and also on my YouTube channel. Now, I would love to hear from you. If you have any questions, drop in the chat box and I can respond to the questions here in the webinar. Or otherwise, if you have any questions after this, do contact one of the email IDs on the website and I can provide more clarification if I'm able to your questions. Thank you so much for your time again and see you in the next webinar next month.